One of the biggest giveaways of an amateur mix is inconsistent vocals, and 9 times out of 10 that comes down to compression. As a mixer, I hear this one a lot. Your compression sounds great most of the time, but then suddenly one line just sort of jumps out the mix, so you tweak the ratio, you add a bit more compression, and suddenly the rest of the vocals sound squashed and lifeless. You end up sort of going round and round in circles and nothing seems to work. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Most people assume that they're using their compressor wrong, but the truth is that compressors just aren't perfect. They react differently depending on how hard you're hitting them. Even if you stack 2 compressors in series, a dynamic vocal is still going to fight you all the way. So how do the pros get their vocals sounding smooth, consistent and perfectly controlled without crushing the life out of them? That's what I'm going to show you in this video. There's a simple but seriously effective trick that most amateur mixers skip over, and once you start using it, you'll instantly hear that final 10% of polish that will get your vocals sitting right and get your mixes sounding professional. Let's jump in. Okay, so here we are, and I've got this vocal phrase which is really quite dynamic. Let's take a listen.
There's not much to say. There's not much to say.
So the biggest issues are this syllable at the start of the phrase. To be honest, it's not uncommon for vocalists to kind of come into a line a little bit hard, but we've also got a couple more. There's this syllable here,
To say.
which sounds a bit all over the place, to be honest, and then there's this big one at the end.
There's not much to say.
So what are some ways that we can deal with this? The most obvious one is to slap a compressor on there. So I've got this 1176 from Universal Audio, love the blue stripe. You can see I've gone for a really snappy attack and release. It should be really grabby, this.
There's not much to say. There's not much to say.
And it does work, right? But I can hear the compressor working, particularly as it comes in, as the compression circuit activates. It's just a little bit pumpy, and you also hear it a little bit on the release as well.
There's not much to say. There's not much to say.
So another way that people might try to deal with something like this is using 2-stage compression. So I'm going to duplicate this track. I'm going to take the 1176, we'll put this on 8:1, pull back the input gain a bit, so we should only be working on the peaks now.
There's not much to say.
So we're only really getting gain reduction.
There's not much to say.
On those problematic syllables. And then we could follow that up with something like an LA2A. This is an absolutely classic 2-stage compression combo.
There's not much to say. There's not much to say. There's not much to say. There's not much to say.
So that's definitely more kind of in your face. It's a much more compressed vocal. But if you ask me, there are still audible compression artifacts there, and it's just not quite doing it for me. In a second, I'm going to show you a really simple trick that really helps with a dynamic vocal like this. But first, if you're finding this video useful, please do like and subscribe. Also, if you're interested in a free guide on how to EQ all the most common elements in any mix, you can download my free EQ cheat sheet from the link below. All right, so how would a pro deal with a vocal like this? Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate the track again, turn off all the compression, and we're going to do what's called clip gain. It's a super simple process. We're just going to snip out a separate region for all the problematic syllables, and then we literally just use the clip gain, which any DAW will have, to pull these down to a comparable level with the rest of the vocal. It's usually a good idea to be a little bit lenient with this. You know, if that phrase or syllable is louder than the rest, let it still be louder than the rest, but just not by so much. So if I play this now, remember the plugins are all bypasses, it's just raw vocal.
There's not much to say. There's not much
This one is sounding a tiny bit unnatural, so I might just put that up slightly.
to say. There's not much to say.
That sounds way more natural already. So if we now start to bring in our compressors, going to put the 1176 down to 4:1 ratio.
There's not much to say. There's not much to say.
Lovely. That's sounding way more consistent now, and that would sit in a mix really, really nicely. And I'm not hearing that compressor work, especially on the kind of attack and release portions. It sounds way, way more transparent. If you were going for a really upfront sound, you might still do the two-stage compression, in which case I'll pull the LA2A back in.
There's not much to say. There's not much to say.
Let's just hear it again.
There's not much to say. There's not much to say.
So now you've got a really nice, heavily compressed upfront vocal that would sit front and center, even in a really busy mix, but without any compression artifacts that you might expect to get from a really dynamic vocal like that.